My name is Chloe John. I'm the Director of Learning and Development at Ace Pickleball Club. We are a startup indoor pickleball club facility with 22 locations in the United States. So we are very much in our startup phase. We've got about 40 people on our corporate team, but we on the L&D team, we're supporting a network of, oh my goodness, 22 times 20, whatever that number is. I'm not in finance for a reason. So we're supporting a very large network of learners that are dispersed across the United States. And we are based in Atlanta. So I do have to call out, I think I saw Delta Airlines in the chat earlier. So hello to all my fellow ATLians. And it does look like we've also got some pickleball players in the chat, which was great. So a little bit more about me is that I worked at Disney, Universal, Six Flags, Theater Fair. I thought I was going to be a theme park kid my whole life. And now I find myself in the world of pickleball, and I couldn't be happier because at Ace Pickleball Club, we are very much a hospitality-driven organization, and we're all about the experience and taking care of our guests and members and making sure that they know that they have a third spot when they come to our clubs. A little bit more about me. I was part of the Learning Guild's 30 Under 30 program for the past 3 years, and that's going to play a part in this presentation because that's how I found out about one of the frameworks that I'm actually going to talk heavily about today that helps me in my role prove how learning works. Oh, come on. There we go. All right, so the problem, like I said, it's pickleball. What could possibly go wrong? Pickleball is super fun. Well, this kind of ended up being our problem. We've got these 22 locations across the United States, and we're rapidly growing. So for these locations, because we are a franchise model, we have our franchisees and their managers come to our club in Roswell, Georgia, and they'll go through a 5-day operations training for managers. After that, we go out to their clubs and we help them open, we help them train their teams. And then we didn't do anything after that. So admittedly, I will share, I was not doing anything to measure learning. And I think I saw somebody in the chat earlier who mentioned, right, like we're always moving so fast in L&D, it can be hard to like pump the brakes. And that's exactly what was happening with us. We were just moving so fast, trying to improve the content of our leadership training and our new club opening training that we forgot to be intentional about measuring learning. So did come under a little bit of scrutiny from the executive team, but it wasn't anything negative. It was more presented as a challenge, right? And I think that goes back to Jonathan's presentation where he shared, it's all about building those relationships with other departments and your stakeholders. And that was really helpful in this case because then it wasn't presented as scrutiny or that I was like under a magnifying glass. It was more like, hey, Chloe, like, what are the results? We're not sure what those results are. So before I move on, I just admitted it myself. I'm not afraid to admit it. I was not measuring learning. So I am curious, are you all currently doing this? So Christopher, I do have a poll. If you wouldn't mind launching that for me in the chat.
It is up and running.
Awesome. Thank you.
And this one, there's only one, folks. So you don't need to do any secret sauce. And that one's on screen. Okay, this one we got, as it's looking right now, we got a clear front runner. I will say that for sure. We are crushing it right now with yes, but only during learning events.
Yep. Okay, great.
It's sticking strong. It's at least at 50%.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. So I wasn't even doing that. Again, I'm not afraid to admit it because I had such a great learning opportunity from this realization. And now I'm really, really committed to measuring that learning. And that's where I'm going to actually show you all some like tactical tips that we are now doing that not only measures during the learning event, but now how we're actually making that a priority later on and making it a continuous learning experience. So the solve, like I mentioned, is using one of these frameworks that I was able to find through my Learning Guild 30 Under 30 network, and that is the framework called LTEM, which stands for the Learning Transfer Evaluation Method, and that is created by Will Thalheimer. I'm not able to see the chat, but I'm curious to see who all knows about Will Thalheimer. He's a leading learning researcher in our field. I had the privilege of taking his certification last month. I was a 6-week boot camp where I was with a bunch of other learning professionals, and we basically went through every step of the LTEM framework. So now I'm going to actually show you a little bit what LTEM looks like. So this is LTEM. There are 8 tiers that you can measure at, right? So it's kind of like Kirkpatrick, but hopefully maybe some of you know Kirkpatrick is not the most accurate way to measure learning, right? So Will Tallheimer has taken Kirkpatrick and really expanded on it. So as you can see, levels 1 through 3, those are in that red zone, right? Attendance completion, activity, are the learners engaged, perception. Those are all, we can measure that, but does that actually tell us that learning transfer occurred? Not really, but still good to measure, still effective data in some regard. Levels 4, 5, and 6, that's where we start to creep into that green zone. That's where we kind of want to focus our efforts to measure if learning transfer is happening, because now we can actually find data to support that, hey, they're actually remembering at the time of the event, and now they're remembering later down the road when it comes to recalling that information. Level 7 and 8, right now we're in the outcomes measured in the work. This is where it gets a little challenging, right? You might have to invest a little more time, resources, energy, get a lot of executive support. These are very hard levels to measure at, especially level 8. But this is where you can actually see if what you're doing is now coming out, these behaviors are coming out in the workplace naturally all on their own. So how are we using this at Ace Pickleball Club, and where does 7TAPS support us in this? And I don't even think I mentioned this. We just started using 7TAPS maybe like a month or 2 ago and are already seeing amazing results, because like Yulia and Rick mentioned, it was very similar to how Intuit was doing things, right? LMS, outdated, not keeping up with the modern age. And that's exactly what we were doing at Ace Pickleball Club. So I've actually been tasked with finding ways to innovate and get training into the workflow. And 7TAPS, within just like a month or 2 of us having it, has already been a phenomenal resource. So I'll share how that's been supporting us. But you can see LTEM, right? Level 1 attendance completion. Yep, we can track that through 7TAPS. We track that through our in-person training if they're physically present. Learner activity number 2, yeah, we can track that, but is that actually telling us if they're going to remember or recall that information down the road? Learner perceptions, we actually use performance-based learner surveys. That's another Will Tallheimer concept. I highly recommend looking into that. We use 7TAPS to collect that survey data at the end of our in-person training program now. We use quizzes through 7TAPS every day of our in-person training. They're getting a pop quiz and they absolutely love it, as you can imagine. They don't, they hate it, but we're making them do it now. And we're also going to be using LTEM on level 5 in that decision-making for post in-person training. And then even for all of our team members, from member specialists all the way up to club manager, are going to be getting these scenarios through 7TAPS, excuse me, that provide help us identify what their decision making actually looks like in real life. And then level 6, we're using observation checklists. I have not played around enough with 7TAPS yet to see if I can put the observation checklist in there. So if anybody has any recommendations, feel free to throw it in the chat. I'd love to see if y'all are using 7TAPS for observations. All right, so after our last in-person leadership training, I actually then was able to take LTEM and really specify like how we were attacking each of these levels in this write-up that I did then send to the executive team. So I did have to educate the executives on what LTEM was, why it's effective. And my 30-second elevator speech on this is: we're measuring for knowledge, decision-making, and realistic scenarios, and then we're making sure they can actually perform the task on the job in the learning event. And now what does that look like later on? So this is during the learning event, which I know a lot of people said you're measuring during the event. So we got those survey results there. We've got our manager observation checklist that I was able to report out on, our day 3 quiz results, and our day 4 quiz results. I actually kind of love that these results are around 75, 79%, because to me, this was indicative that there's more opportunities for my team to do more to help the learners get where they need to go. And it's just even awesome that we have this data in the first place. So this is what I sent out. And then I also sent them this little and I just took a video of what my spreadsheet ended up looking like. So I did a bunch of, pie charts and bar graphs. This is the performance learner surveys. So that's level 3 of LTEM. Like, how do the learners feel about the experience? I've got my manager behavior observation. That's level 6 with some notes there. And then I've got my day 3 and day 4 quiz results, which I did take through 7TAPS. And I was able to actually send that out, and we can identify trends where people are getting things right and where they're getting things wrong. And that's great, because now we can add that into our design. Okay. So now we get to the point of measuring after the learning event has occurred. And I think one of the great things about LTEM as well is we identified that we were really using LTEM in our design, but we weren't intentionally adding the measurement component to the design of the programs. So that's now a really big focus for the team is we're actually designing perfectly related to LTEM, right? We have those scenarios in there. We're doing on the job tasks. We're, just spitballing pop quiz questions at them when they're here. And the same applies for that new club opening training when we're with the member specialists. They're doing simulated tours. We're doing simulated point of sale practice. But we weren't finding ways to measure if that was actually working. So now we've added that component to the event. And what does that look like post the event? So this actually, again, we just started using 7TAP, so I'm really just skimming the surface of all the great data we're about to get. But for our operations immersion, that 5-day in-person leadership course, we actually just did a pop quiz yesterday for our 2 learners. And you'll see like their scores were a little low. And I kind of loved that because that shows that there's an opportunity for us to be more intentional about making sure this information is recalled more on a consistent basis. And I have a little question there. What level of LTEM is this measuring? I can't see you lovely people in the chat, but I hope that you all put level 4 for knowledge checks. I didn't really have any scenarios in this 7TAPs. But now what it looks like for our ongoing hospitality training is I'm able to send these 7TAPs through our Teams integration to managers. We can track how the managers are doing. Then I plan on sending a public link so they can share that with their teams. And now we can actually give them a scenario. So you'll see there's my scenario. There was an opportunity for Chloe to deliver active hospitality. Choose which one do you think is the best option? And we're actually able to measure in really fascinating results. Our club managers did outstanding on this 7TAP. So that actually was great data to receive. And now it's like, okay, how do we maybe challenge them a little bit more and get them ones that are going to make them think at a higher level? And if you're wondering, this is measuring level 5 of LTEM because this is that decision-making scenario based. And finally, we're talking about those scenarios, decision-making. We actually have this very extensive library that I've had the great privilege of working on with our CEO directly because our executive team is very, and I know this is rare, our executive team is very passionate about L&D and believes it is one of the most important pieces of our business. So he has actually jumped in here with me. We've written, we're at like 43 scenarios now that we plan on using for 7TAPs, similar right to this ongoing hospitality training that we're actually going to format through 7TAPs, send out to the teams, see how they perform. And then actually on weekly operations calls, I'll join some of them and provide feedback to those club teams and identify if there's any training pain points that we may need to address. And that is all I have. That was very quick. I've gotten a ton of LinkedIn connections, so thank you all for already connecting with me. And Christopher, I'll turn it over to you for Q&A.
Chloe, this was fantastic. First of all,
Thank
everybody,
you.
can we get a round of emojis for Chloe here? That was great, and I love when people are vulnerable and honest. Like, yeah, I wasn't really doing the measuring thing. Like, it just
I
wasn't
was
really
not.
what. I'm curious. Like, what was the main driver of that? Was it like you? Was it the bit? Like, who was really pushing that?
To start measuring for learning?
Yep.
Yeah, so really it kind of honestly came down to the executives really being like, hey, we think this is working, but where's the proof in the pudding? And I was like,
Okay.
oh no.
That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that one.
And it was honestly very humbling in the best way because again it was not it was scrutiny but it wasn't like aggressive scrutiny. It was
Right.
more like it was a challenge.
Okay.
So again, my executive team is absolutely unbelievable at Ace Pickleball Club. Again, I know it's rare. They really truly think L&D is one of the most important departments in the business.
Yeah.
So them saying that kind of made me go, oh crap, yeah, I need to be doing something about this. And then again, through my 30 under 30 connections, Will Tallheimer came and presented to the alumni group one night. And I was like, this timing is insane. This is exactly what I'm struggling with. And I was able to then sign up for his boot camp. So it was kind of all like
Cool. Cool.
So
Well, and the thing about it is, I mean, and it's a reasonable question for business leaders to ask. I mean, they're spending money, they're spending time and resources on it to be like,
right.
so, I mean, how do
Yes.
we know? Like, how do we know if this did anything? And I think sometimes when we get into that moment, there can be like this pressure to like make it up or over.
Oh
And
yeah.
my experience has been, it's just better to be like, well, if we have it, we'll talk about it. If we don't, let's talk about what we can do. Because honestly, sometimes it's on them too to go, well, what did you like? What are you shooting for? And sometimes they're like, oh, I get like, what would
Right.
satisfactory look like to you? Because honestly, I've had business leaders, sometimes it's engagement, sometimes they want to know whether
Exactly.
this, like,
Yeah.
so actually asking some of those questions can be really helpful and it can lead to a dialogue instead of turning into this like, we're playing a game of chicken to see who's.
Exactly. And again, like I cannot sing enough praises about my executive team. They're absolutely unbelievable. But it was that. It was like, this is what we're looking for. We don't have this right now. What can we do to get that information? And
Yeah.
then they have given me full reign to start exploring 7 taps. That was not a tool. Again, we did not
Yeah.
have that until a month ago. And we've already seen like so many great impacts on the business and our stakeholders, right? The club managers, the franchisees,
Yeah.
they love it. I've already gotten amazing feedback of how like this is great. It works in the flow of learning. This is going to be so impactful for the team.
Yeah.
So it was a really good pivot, and I'm glad they challenged me to find ways to bring that learning
Yeah.
to the learners.
Well, and kudos to you for actually leaning in and engaging in that because I think, what you just described actually highlights how when you actually lean in, it goes back to the first session, like and actually partner with your
Yep,
business team to
exactly.
say, all right, hey, like, what are you trying to get out of this? Let's work on this together. It results in, getting new tools, like having a better collaboration, all that stuff. So
Yeah,
I think your story is a great success story and keep
thank
up your
you.
energy and attitude on it. Cause I think sometimes that can be so a lot of times our attitude has a huge influence on whether we're seen as a partner or not.
Yes,
And I think, your attitude is probably a large contributor to what is leading to a lot of the
thank
success you're
you.
seeing.
It's
So
not
keep it
always
up.
easy, but we
No,
are
it's not.
trying.
Hey, well, and that's all you can do.